independent sexual violence advisors to support complainants through the court process. And if I'll just say this, it's early days, but initial data is positive. The number of rape prosecutions in the second quarter of this year was 14% higher than in the last quarter pre-COVID. The number of convictions, 16% higher over the same period.
Andrew Gwynn.
Thank you. The rape review lumps together domestic violence and rape spending. That's £176 million as its headline figure, but of £125 million of that is for refuge accommodation, which is vital, but it's nothing to do with improving the victim's experience of the criminal justice system or improving rape convictions. So can the Minister explain just how much of the new funding he has secured from the Treasury to support rape victims get justice?
Well, I'm very glad that he's raised this point, and he's absolutely right. Refuge accommodation is very important, but it's not everything. So one of the things I'm very proud of is there's an additional 27 million that is going to recruit 700 independent sexual violence advisors and IDVAs as well. Now, these are individuals who can provide that critical support to people who might, frankly, find the whole process quite forbidding. Also, the work we've done to publish the Victims Code in April 2021, which provides victims with the rights that they deserve.
We now go to Jim Shapps.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I understand the Minister's response very well, but it's not just a case of making a situation of making the cases come quicker to court and have them processed. It's also about those ladies and rape victims who are very vulnerable and very lonely. What's going to happen in the time period until the case is heard so that they have the assistance and the help that they need from every point of view? Thank you.
It's an excellent point the Honourable gentleman makes. One of the other things that we've done is we increased funding for rape support centres by 2/3, so that individuals know that they're not alone, because the constant refrain that you will hear is individuals saying, you know, I didn't feel supported. But it would be quite wrong for the message to go out to suggest that there isn't that support. There was a case recently in my county of Gloucestershire where the victims afterwards said this: Victim B, I would just like to say how happy I am with the whole criminal justice system. The support offered is amazing. The support from the police and GRASAC, which is Gloucestershire's Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre, has been amazing. That support is out there, and we want to make sure it's there in ever greater quantities.
Chair of the committee, Sir Robert.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I welcome the Solicitor General to his place for questions for the first time. And he brings massive personal experience to cases of this kind, and he's prosecuted exactly these sort of cases. Would he agree that in fact there has been significant improvement in the treatment of victims, particularly after the revision of the CPS legal guidance, for example in relation to the awareness of trauma and the impact that has upon victims, and also getting the right balance in dealing with digital evidence as far as that's concerned? Is it not important now that we maintain the capacity of the court system to bring these cases to trial in a timeless fashion in terms of judges, court availability and quality experienced advocates to deal with these important prosecutions?
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman for his kind words, and as always he's absolutely right. So we have to strike this important balance in respect of digital evidence to ensure that the evidence to put people behind bars is appropriately obtained without compromising the right to a fair trial. No one here wants to do that, but he's absolutely correct on capacity as well, and that's a point that the Lord Chief Justice has made very powerfully, and it's one that we're acutely alive to.
Secretary.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'd also like to welcome the Solicitor General to his place. When asked by Sky News about rape prosecutions, the Prime Minister said that the CPS is not taking rape prosecutions seriously enough. And the Prime Minister also refused to commit to the government's promise in its own rape review to restore rape prosecution rates to 2016 levels by the end of this Parliament. Does the Solicitor General agree with the Prime Minister's comments? And isn't this just another example of victims being abandoned by this government?
No, that's not the case at all. I think the really important thing is to look at the actions. And one of the things that I was very heartened by in this year's SR is that the additional funding that is going into the CPS is extremely significant. So £80 million. And to put that into concrete terms, that means there will be an additional 100 RASO prosecutors. And the ones that I met, I have to say, in CPS West Midlands, were incredibly motivated, diligent, decent and determined individuals. And the Prime Minister is very clear about wanting to see improvements, and he's getting behind it with providing pounds, shillings and pence.
Question number 6, please, Mr Speaker.
Attorney General.
The CPS's early investigative advice when it comes to county lines with the police is making a difference. The majority of county lines offending relates to drugs convictions and human trafficking. And this year, and whilst the figures don't relate to county lines offending alone, the CPS secured 36,000 drug convictions and 238 human trafficking convictions.
Duncan Baker.
Speaker, I just want to place on record my thanks to Norfolk Police. Just last month, they arrested 12 county line drug dealers in a week-long crackdown against drugs across Norfolk, and that is, of course, to be hugely applauded. I just want to check and ask my right honourable friend that do the police have the right support that they need, and more importantly, does the CPS have all of the tools that they need and the resources to successfully prosecute drug dealing across our country?
Attorney General.
My honourable friend raises a very important point, and I want to applaud his police team in Norfolk for the great results. And in the east of England, Operation Oroki has led to significant terms of imprisonment imposed on 42 offenders convicted. As of October 2021, the number of county lines operations covered by the operation has been more than halved. They work closely with the police and they are leading to a high volume of convictions since November 2019.
Yeah. Edward Timpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 7.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The law officers frequently meet the CPS and colleagues in the MOJ and elsewhere to progress the recovery of the criminal justice system. It's welcome that the government has significantly increased the budget for the CPS with an additional £85 million at the 2019 SR and a 12% uplift at this SR over the SR period to help recruit and retrain prosecutors and modernise the digital infrastructure. Plainly, court capacity plays a part too, and I commend my honourable friend for his work to increase the judicial retirement age, which will make an important difference.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and you will know that I was delighted that the government took up the cudgels of my private member's bill and now legislating to raise the retirement age of magistrates from 70 to 75. But on its own, it's not going to solve the substantial backlog that we still have in our courts, particularly our magistrates' courts. So what other measures can be taken in the meantime, over and above what is already happening, to ensure that we can get through the justice that needs to be done both fairly but also efficiently?
As always, my friend makes an important point. The Magistrates' Court hear over 90% of all criminal cases, a point that's not always given the emphasis that it might. And in some parts of the country, Magistrates' Courts have cleared their backlogs completely, and indeed did so many months ago. To support that recovery, the government took measures including sitting additional courts on Saturdays, installing plexiglass into over 450 courtrooms, and we want to keep up that momentum. So so-called trial blitz courts are planned for later this year. And let me just say this, we are fortunate in this country to have dedicated and public-spirited magistrates who continue to do an exemplary job in ensuring that justice is done.
If we're brief, we might just clear the lot. Bob Blackman.
Question number 8, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Hate crime can have a devastating impact on individuals and communities. In the last year, the CPS prosecuted more than 10,000 such offences, and in 79% of those cases which resulted in a conviction, the court agreed to impose a sentence uplift to reflect this important aggravating factor. Let the message go out. Those who seek to divide our society through hate can expect a robust response.
I thank my honourable friend for his answer. Clearly, hate crime is a serious concern right across this country. Do the local Crown Prosecution Services have all the resources they need to actually take these measures on and prosecute those people that propriety with hate crime?
Yes, they do, and those resources are growing. CPS London North maintains hate crime coordinators and inclusion and community engagement managers to provide a single point of contact on all aspects of hate crime prosecution. And can I just say this about CPS North London? They've achieved some of the highest sentence uplift statistics anywhere in the country, with increases handed down in 83% of cases.
Number 9, Mr Speaker.
Attorney General.
The unduly lenient sentence scheme in 2021 has continued to ensure that the seriousness of offending is properly reflected in the sentence imposed, and over 100 cases have been heard by the Court of Appeal this year. I have personally presented cases securing an increase in the sentence imposed on a rapist earlier this year.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I, along with many in this House, have become increasingly concerned about unduly lenient sentences for rape, especially in relation to those crimes committed on minors. Last month, a man was jailed after he was found guilty of 6 counts of rape on a 14-year-old, 2 counts of rape of sexual activity on a child, and other sexual offences. He was sentenced to only 9 years imprisonment. This follows reports that last year a man was jailed after being found guilty of raping a 3-year-old in a wood. Again, 9 years. These prison sentences are simply not long enough. Will the Attorney-General agree to look at these cases and meet with me to discuss what more could be done to ensure these sentences match the crimes committed?
Attorney-General.
My honourable friend raises some very grave cases, and I can assure her that these offences are in the scope of the unduly lenient sentence scheme, and that the Solicitor General and I will consider every such referral to us with the greatest of care. I'm proud of our work in respect of offending against minors, and in 3 recent cases concerning child sexual abuse, offenders had non-custodial sentences replaced with immediate custody. I hope this sends a clear message as to how seriously this offending is taken.
Going holding rate.
Number 10, please, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Through its 3 national central casework divisions and 14 regional complex casework units, the CPS continues to work with the National Crime Agency and other criminal justice partners to bring offenders to justice for a range of serious crimes, including serious and organised crime, terrorism and serious and complex economic crime.
Thank you for your answer. The Serious Fraud Office has been very clear that a new criminal offence of failure to prevent economic crime would significantly increase the number of successful prosecutions for fraud. Would my honourable friend set out what steps we're taking to bring this forward?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this issue. Economic crime is not a victimless crime, but it strikes at the very heart of the society that we want to be. And I'm pleased to see that the Law Commission has published its discussion document on corporate criminal liability earlier this year. Both the CPS and SFO have provided input into this and took part in a series of events to share their operational insights. The Law Commission is aiming to publish an options paper early next year and will then work with the government to implement any next steps.
As the House will be aware, I previously exercised my discretion regarding the sub judice resolution to allow references to the Northern Ireland Protocol on the grounds of national importance. Although there are relevant live legal proceedings, I am further exercising that discretion today in relation to the urgent question. We now come to the urgent question. Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Minister for the Cabinet Office if he will make a statement on the Northern Ireland Protocol and negotiations with the European Union.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to begin by reaffirming the Government's commitment to keeping both Houses of Parliament updated on the UK-EU relationship, and we remain committed to doing just that. And my right honourable friend, the Noble Lord Frost, provided an update to the House of Lords on EU relations just last Wednesday, the 10th of November, in the form of an oral statement. Unfortunately, as this Honourable House was in recess at the time, that could not immediately be repeated on the same day. The timing of that update was unavoidable, led by external business, international business. However, I recognise the importance of keeping both houses duly informed.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think more remarkable for what it didn't say than what it did. But I'm grateful to you for granting the urgent question. It's a shame that it was necessary and that the Government has not seen fit to offer the House a statement. At the very least, we would have wanted to hear some commitment today from the Government benches that there would be no triggering of Article 16 this side of Christmas. The disruption that that would cause would be catastrophic. But still we hear nothing from them. When the Minister comes to reply, I hope he will address that point. Listening to the Minister today and to his colleagues in the airwaves in recent weeks, you could almost believe that the terms of our agreement with the European Union and the Northern Ireland Protocol were nothing to do with them. It was a big boy that done it and ran away, almost as if it was negotiated by someone else and voted through this House in the teeth of Conservative opposition. We know, in fact, this truth is something quite different. Article 16 does not exist as a get-out-of-jail-free card for the Government when they do not like the deal that they have done. It is a mechanism that allows for the taking of unilateral safeguard measures if either the EU or the UK concludes that the deal is leading to serious practical problems or causing diversion of trade. To invoke it in the way in which Government ministers speak would be seen as an act of bad faith on the part of the UK Government. What people and businesses in Northern Ireland want and need is pragmatic solutions to be reached and implemented in good faith, not more posturing. Businesses in Northern Ireland are crying out for a sanitary and phytosanitary agreement which would remove at a stroke the vast majority of disruption for people on either side of the Irish Sea. That is where the government should be devoting its energy. So can the Minister please update the House on the negotiation of that and other agreements under the protocol? With regard to the question of the role of the European Court of Justice in supervising this agreement, can the Minister explain why the Government now identifies this as being a problem when it was clearly within the protocol when it was negotiated and signed? Mr Speaker, the problems with which the Government now complains are all ones of their own making. They chose to take us out of the Customs Union and to put a border down the Irish Sea. It was a remarkable choice for a supposedly unionist party to have made, but they made it and we now have to live with it. This is the time for posturing to stop and for mature government to start. A recent Queen's University survey found that 52% of people in Northern Ireland support the protocol. A significant figure. I'm sure the Minister agrees. Will he now get on and make it work?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. With regard to the latest on the UK-EU relationship, my noble friend Lord Frost and Vice President Šefčovič met on the 12th of November in London to consider the state of play in discussions relating to the Northern Ireland Protocol. And Lord Frost noted that there remain significant gaps to be bridged between the UK and EU positions. And he noted that it remained the United Kingdom's preference to find a consensual way forward. But that I have to say that Article 16 safeguards were and are a legitimate part of the protocol's provisions. Now, the noble Lord Frost also underlined the need to address the full range of issues that the United Kingdom had identified in the course of discussions if a comprehensive and durable solution was to be found that supported the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And it's in the best interests of Northern Ireland. And in this context, although talks had so far been conducted in a constructive spirit, the noble Lord Frost underlined that in order to make progress, it was important to bring new energy and impetus to discussions. Accordingly, Mr Speaker, intensified talks are taking place this week between teams in Brussels on all issues, giving particular attention to medicines, for example, and customs issues. And Lord Frost has been in Belfast this week as well, talking to political and business and civil society leaders, and will meet with Vice President Šefčovič at the end of this week to consider progress, and I will continue to keep Parliament informed.
Sir William Cash.
Indeed, Mr Speaker. With respect to the right honourable gentleman who raised the urgent question, I don't think he perhaps knows that, in line with what the Solicitor General was saying, Paymaster General now, that in fact Lord Frost appeared in front of the European Scrutiny Committee only a few weeks ago, but not only that we asked him questions relating to this very issue of Article 16 and the European Court of Justice. And he answered those questions with great clarity. Not only that it's quite clear that the intransigence of the EU included, for example, the invoking of Article 16 with regard to the COVID laws that they introduced some time ago, and that regarding Article 16, disruption of trade has taken place. The EU has been very intransigent. And regarding the European Court of Justice, we are more than entitled to ensure that we are not governed by a court which has already been repealed in respect of the Withdrawal Agreement Act.
Minister.
I agree with my right honourable friend. We want a negotiated outcome, but we are willing to use Article 16. There's no change in the position that my noble friend the Lord Frost made to his committee only a few days ago.
Shadow Minister Alex Davis-Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I am grateful to the member for tabling this UQ because it is simply unacceptable and quite insulting to this House that Lord Frost would wait for this place to have risen to make a statement in the other place, and that the government would have to be dragged to this place to be subject to proper and timely scrutiny. Now, turning to Northern Ireland, it has become a key pressure point in UK-EU relations. I hope sincerely that the change of tone from Lord Frost may be a sign that progress can be made, because these are fractious, painful times for Northern Ireland, and we are at an unsettling moment. Political dysfunction has left power sharing in a fragile state. Trust in the UK government in Northern Ireland, an essential foundation of peace, has fallen away across all communities. Trust, Mr Speaker, is hard won and easy to lose. I say to the Minister, in sincere hope he listens, this is not the context in which any responsible government would force another high-stakes, divisive standoff. With a cost of living crisis and growing instability, the last thing this country needs is a damaging trade dispute with our nearest trading partners. Does the Minister therefore agree that jobs, stability and livelihoods in Northern Ireland depend on the EU and UK finding a deal which lowers the barriers the Prime Minister created in the days and weeks ahead? Does he not agree that the evidence increasingly shows communities themselves want a solution, not a standoff? Labour have called all year for solutions which lower the barriers down the Irish Sea. The Prime Minister personally negotiated, and that's precisely why we need a deal. Communities know invoking Article 16 would not solve these problems. It would not end the dispute, it would simply prolong it. Therefore, in order to find that agreement, the people of Northern Ireland must be brought in. Does he not agree it is simply unsustainable for a government few trust to be making huge decisions for the future with Northern Ireland excluded entirely from the talks? So will he confirm today that the UK and EU will bring Northern Ireland's leaders and communities into the process to speak for themselves? That's the path to a sustainable solution. In closing, I would say to the Minister, remember what is at stake in the days ahead, and remember that those who have the most to lose from another poisonous standoff are the people and businesses of Northern Ireland. It is in those interests and the national interest that the government should get a deal.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I say to the Honourable Lady first that we did not wait. This House was in recess and a written ministerial statement was laid yesterday. On the substantive points that she made about cost of living, yes, of course, people are concerned about cost of living, but the Northern Ireland Protocol has real-life consequences as to cost of living. Businesses also know that what we would be doing by using Article 16, should we have to do so, would be to alleviate pressures on the movement of goods. It is a safeguard mechanism in order to improve a situation which is unsatisfactory. It is not there to cause disruption. It is there to do exactly the opposite. It is a mechanism that both parties signing up to the withdrawal agreement agreed to. That is an active part of an agreement with multiple articles, and it is one article amongst multiple others. It is perfectly valid and available to use. We want, however, a negotiated outcome. Our policy remains the same, acting within the law at all times, and we are willing to use Article 16 should we need to do so. But as to her point about discussions, my noble friend, the Lord Frost, was in Northern Ireland on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week and met all sides. I'm advised that he met representatives of the SDLP, the Alliance, the DUP, the UUP and Sinn Féin. He is, of course, keeping everyone very fully informed and travelling on a very regular basis in order to do so. The basis of our negotiations are contained within the July command paper that this House has seen.
Dr. Andrew Mercer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would my right honourable friend reaffirm that the priority for Her Majesty's Government remains upholding the Belfast Agreement, even if the European Union appears to hold it so lightly? And on the subject of bad faith cited by the right honourable gentleman, the member for Orkney and Shetland, what does he make of the fact that still 20% of the European Union's checks occur in relation to goods going from GB to NI, despite the fact that Northern Ireland has the equivalent population of 0.5% of that of the European Union? And does he agree with me that the bad faith that the European Union is exercising in this matter makes it absolutely essential that we continue to keep under consideration the rescinding of Articles 5, 7, 8 and 10 as contained within the July command paper?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend, and I thank him for his question, and as a former Northern Ireland minister, he speaks with authority in this House. He is right that it is of paramount importance, and I'm sure all sides would agree, that the Belfast Agreement be respected and protected, and that is a motivation certainly of Her Majesty's Government. The point that he makes about Northern Ireland trade, it is right to say that the Northern Ireland Executive estimated that from January to March, about 20% of all the EU's checks were being conducted in respect of Northern Ireland, even though Northern Ireland's population is just 0.5% of the EU as a whole. I think that speaks for itself.
SNP spokesperson Richard Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Notwithstanding recess dates, it took until the 16th of November to even get a written statement on this, which turned out just to be a copy and paste job from Lord Frost's earlier statement. And I'm shocked and appalled that it's taken until today to actually have a minister come to the House to do members the courtesy of answering questions on behalf of the government. And I'm personally absolutely sick, fed up hearing excuses about why this government allows others to hear the business of the government and its thinking before it comes here to explain it. And I wonder how long we as members can be expected to tolerate this incourtesy. But we have yet another statement and yet another rattle of the sabre on Article 16. And of course, Article 16's deployment simply invites an equal and opposite response from the European Union and simply reconvenes existing discussions in another forum. Now, the best way, whether members opposite want to hear it or not, to eliminate frictions in the east-west trade between Northern Ireland and Great Britain is for Great Britain to come back into closer alignment with the single market and customs union. So can the Paymaster General give this House an assurance that it will, under no circumstances, whatever the discussions hold ahead, allow Northern Ireland to become subject to the same kind of trade frictions between North and South as the government has allowed to creep into the relationship between Great Britain and the European Union?
Well, of course, the honourable gentleman is quite wrong. The reality of the matter is that a written ministerial statement is informing the House, and that was laid yesterday. He makes a point, I think, about business. I think I am right in saying that in the Financial Times today there is a report that Marks and Spencers say that proposals by the European Union would not cut red tape. So I think that it is important to bear in mind that negotiations are in progress. It's not the right forum at this stage in delicate negotiations to try and do that in this honourable House. What is right is that Lord Frost continues his discussions with Vice President Šefčovič, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Peter Bowden.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I congratulate the right honourable member for obtaining this very important, urgent question. But could I take difference with him on one thing? Would my right honourable friend confirm that the triggering of Article 16 should be based on circumstances and not in any particular date?
The triggering of Article 16, of course, will, if it needs to occur, there are defined circumstances which would need to be ascertained. In my view, those circumstances are ascertained.
Hilary Benn.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Speaker, there is a certain irony in ministers telling France to respect the TCA in full when it comes to fish, while at the same time threatening to scrap the Northern Ireland Protocol. And I only hope that the change in tone I think we detect in the last week or so is a sign that the government realises it needs to step back from the brink. Indeed, both sides do, because a trade war with the EU is in nobody's interest. The question I want to put is about the European Court of Justice, because we've heard what businesses in Northern Ireland have said about the impact of the protocol, but can the Minister tell us how many of them have raised with him the role of the ECJ, which is something, of course, that the government signed up to when it agreed the protocol in the first place?
None whatsoever. Well done.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, the right honourable gentleman should understand, and I'm sure he does, that Article 16, the activation of it, is not scrapping the protocol. It is part of the agreement. It is a valid part of the agreement. And as for the CJEU, he asks who has raised the Court of Justice of the European Union. What people do raise, and raise on a regular basis, is sovereignty. And they say that they want their laws decided democratically by the people of this country. And it is not normal, in my limited experience of the law, if I can put it that way, it is not normal for where there are two parties for the courts of one party to resolve disputes between the two in an agreement. So it is not a normal situation, and the European Union have shown in the infraction proceedings that they already brought, in my respectful submission, in a precipitate manner, when we had essential cause to take actions to protect food supply in Northern Ireland, that this isn't just theoretical. This is something that they are prepared to do. They've shown they are prepared to do it. We therefore need to take sovereignty seriously. This side of the House does take sovereignty seriously and will continue to do so.
Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the answers he's given thus far. Lord Frost is clearly involved in delicate negotiations, but it does seem to me that they're placing great strain on the Northern Ireland Executive and the various different sections of the community in Northern Ireland. So how long are we going to allow these negotiations to go on before we take action, and can we set a timetable for actually completing these negotiations so people can get back to running their businesses and leading their normal lives?
Well, I understand my honourable friend's desire to set a finite date, but as I'm sure he will appreciate, that is not conducive to good diplomatic negotiations, and I have no doubt that everything is being done as expeditiously as is reasonable.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I do believe that a statement should have been made in this House at the earliest possible opportunity, but I welcome the point that has been made today as a result of the urgent question. Is the Paymaster General concerned that after the chiding that the government got for putting in place a protocol that has put a border down the Irish Sea, we now appear to have this Joan of Arc-like standoff of the opposition now holding to the protocol as if it is something precious, when it is destroying business, it is costing businesses in Northern Ireland £850 million. That is what is catastrophic. The friction of trade within the United Kingdom. The Paymaster General mentioned sovereignty. I represent the constituency in the United Kingdom. So do all the members in this House. We should not be doing Brussels work from these benches. Brussels has destroyed this part of the United Kingdom by insisting on the enforcement of a protocol in a disgraceful manner. I would appeal to the Paymaster General, who knows that the government's paper in July of this year said that the conditions for invoking Article 16 have been met. We are now in the jaws of December, and those conditions remain met. Invoke Article 16 and invoke it now, and stop dilly-dallying on this issue. Put businesses out of their misery in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I will take this opportunity to apologise again that an oral statement wasn't made on Monday. I have mentioned that a written ministerial statement was made on Tuesday, and he makes a fair point. But on that issue, on the substantive point that he makes, I agree that there is a major difficulty. The protocol is not delivering its core purpose, and it is crucial that it has unionist and nationalist party consent. Northern Ireland cannot function due to the power-sharing relationship with which he's extremely familiar. That is the foundation of the Constitution, and the point that he makes is understood. It is also right to say, on the business front, that at least 200 companies in Great Britain are no longer servicing the Northern Ireland market. So the point he makes is a perfectly valid one. A significant number of medicines, for example, are also still at risk of discontinuation. And I will say this, we saw in one of the national newspapers recently that even the supply of trees for the Queen's forthcoming Platinum Jubilee cannot apparently be supplied in Northern Ireland from Great Britain. So there are problems that are frankly being shredded by the way this protocol is working.
100% of the roll-on, roll-off lorry traffic from the EU to the Republic of Ireland goes through Great Britain. A lot of it past Kettering on the A14, wouldn't a sensible negotiated agreement towards a comprehensive and durable settlement involve Her Majesty's government taking responsibility for policing goods going across the Irish Sea to the Republic in return for free passage of goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, where those goods stay in Northern Ireland?
Well, I shall resist the temptation, Mr. Speaker, to ask my honourable friend for Kettering to join the negotiating team, but he speaks, as ever, powerfully for his constituency, which, of course, is, I think, the centre point of this country geographically, and is a centre also for the movement of goods. So he speaks with some authority in this area, and I've noted what he said.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this was all so predictable when nearly a year ago, just under a year ago, we voted in this House for this agreement. Isn't it just the case that both, one, the people of Northern Ireland want a compromise, but two, in reality, the government just threw Northern Ireland under the bus when it went into negotiations in the name of Brexit?
Certainly not.
Sir Tony Lloyd.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the Paymaster General, I'll give him credit, read his brief very well, but he knows very little about sentiments of the people in Northern Ireland. The noble Lord Frost met yesterday, amongst other meetings, a group of people representing the trade unions and civil society, and from both loyalist and nationalist traditions. They told him very clearly, get on with making the protocol work. The game and the rhetoric that this government's engaged in is dangerous in the Northern Ireland context, very dangerous. And the Paymaster General has a duty to go back to the Prime Minister and tell him to tone down that rhetoric. It can be so disastrous that we should not even be thinking of going there.
Well, I don't recognise the honourable gentleman's characterisation of the rhetoric. This is a negotiation. We want a settled solution. That is our preference. And that is what the negotiations with Vice President Šefčovič are currently doing. But we do have Article 16 as a viable safeguard.
Ben Bradshaw.
What assessment has the government made of the damage to the UK economy as a whole and our standing in the world were the government to trigger Article 16 and it result in a trade war with the EU?
Well, Article 16 is designed to alleviate problems, not cause them. It is a mechanism that was written in by the consent of both parties so that it could alleviate and act as a safeguard. Threats that are emanating from other quarters about pulling out of the TCA and the like would, of course, do the exact opposite. They would be causing disruption, and that is not in the interests of the people of the province of Northern Ireland. It is this side that is seeking a negotiated preferential solution.
Bishop Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister must know that the Tories are playing with fire. Threatening not to implement a deal signed 11 months ago would be outrageous. What does the Minister believe the people of Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK have to gain by showing the UK clearly to be an untrustworthy and dishonest negotiating partner whilst it simultaneously seeks to secure international trade deals?
Well, we're not seeking to secure international trade deals. We are securing international trade deals. We've secured over 60 of them so far with countries all around the world. We are a trading nation. We enjoy trading with others, and we always have done. And that's what we're going to continue to do. But I do need to repeat, Article 16 is not a threat. It is a part of the agreement that was signed between the parties. It is available and ready to use.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In any negotiation, it's best to have all parties round the table. So will the government consider bringing in the locally elected members in order to have a meaningful negotiation which really matches the sentiment which my honourable friend mentioned before that's happening on the ground in Northern Ireland?
Well, I'm pleased to be able to confirm that, as I've already indicated, Lord Frost has already engaged with the interested parties, and even on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week did so in Northern Ireland. All parties are being duly kept informed, including this Honourable House and the other place.
We're Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A consequence of Brexit was always that we needed to erect a trade border between Britain and the EU. And there were only two places where they could go, either in the Irish Sea or a land border on the island of Ireland. So since the government is now trying to reverse the agreement which puts the trade border in the Irish Sea, what other option is the government actively pursuing? A land border on the Irish Sea, or rejoining the single market for the whole of the UK, not just Northern Ireland?
We are pursuing a negotiation, and she will have to wait and see.
Finally, but certainly not the least of questions, Jim Shapps.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. You're most kind. The good wine always comes last.
I'm going to wait until which, Jim?
Okay. Can I just thank the Paymaster General for his answers to the UQ? Back in July, government published a paper in which it stated clearly that conditions to trigger Article 16 had already been met. The M&S, and the Paymaster referred to M&S. M&S have just stated this week that it's costing them, or will cost them at this moment, £9 million to cross the border, and the extra costs and the extra bureaucracy that they have. And for small businesses in my constituency, I want to put it on record, speaking as an MP for Strangford, who has got his feet clearly on the ground and knows what's happening and what the people are telling me, that some businesses are facing going to the wall as a result. The PM repeated the assertion recently. They also said that time is of the essence, and if the current negotiations with the EU fail to arrive at an agreed outcome within a short period, then government will move and must move immediately to take decisions action to remove the the barriers to trade between GB and NI. I would urge the Paymaster to do just that: initiate Article 16 and remove the barrier.
I like hearing them, John John. They've got to be shorter questions. He wants speeches. I'm sure he'll catch the eye of somebody in the chair later. Minister.
He is right, Mr Speaker, though you have saved him the best till last. The honourable gentleman is right. Marks and Spencers make a powerful point. Time is of the essence. Her Majesty's government will move to remove barriers if necessary. The Article 16 application has already been met, and we are very alive to the time sensitivity involved.
We now come to the statement. I call the Secretary of State for Transport, Grant Shapps.
Mr Speaker, with permission, I'd like to make a statement about the future of railway. Today I'm proud to announce our integrated rail plan, a £96 billion programme which will transform rail services in the North and the Midlands. The largest single rail investment ever made by a UK government. An investment that, rather than being felt decades into the future, will arrive much, much sooner. And Mr Speaker, this unprecedented commitment to build a world-class railway that delivers for passengers and freight, for towns and cities, for communities and businesses, will benefit 8 out of 10 of the busiest rail corridors across the North and the Midlands, providing faster journeys, increased capacity, more frequent services, up to 10 years sooner than previously planned. And Mr Speaker, when I became Transport Secretary in 2019, the HS2 project was already about 10 years old. I was concerned that the costs were rising, that newer projects like the Midlands Rail Hub, the Northern Powerhouse Rail, hadn't been fully factored into those plans. And under the original scheme, the HS2 track would not have reached the East Midlands and the North until the early 2040s. Clearly, a rethink was needed to make sure the project would deliver for the regions that it served as soon as possible. And this is how the integrated rail plan was born, a desire to deliver sooner, and so the Prime Minister and I asked Douglas Oakervey to lead that work and make recommendations on the best way forward. One of the key criticisms was that HS2 was designed in isolation from the rest of the transport network. The original plans gave us high-speed lines to the East Midlands, but it didn't serve any of the 3 biggest East Midlands cities, for example. If you wanted to get to Nottingham or Derby, you'd still have to go to Parkway Station and change onto a local tram or train. Oakervey made clear, and a very convincing case, for considering that HS2 as part of an integrated rail plan, should work alongside local, regional and national services. Not just those travelling between our biggest cities, but so we accepted those recommendations and asked the National Infrastructure Commission to develop options. The Commission came back with two key suggestions. First, that we adopt a flexible approach, initially setting out a core integrated rail network, but that we remain open to future additions as long as expectations and costs and timing were met. Second, that strengthening regional rail links would be most economically beneficial for the North and the Midlands, connecting towns with main railway networks, bringing hope and opportunity to communities who for too long felt left behind. And that we should bring these benefits to passengers and local economies as soon as possible. These then were the guiding principles behind the integrated rail plan that I'm announcing today. It's an ambitious and unparalleled programme that not only overhauls the intercity links across the North and Midlands, but it also speeds up the benefits for local areas and serves destinations people most want to reach. Mr. Speaker, this new blueprint delivers 3 high-speed lines. First, that's Crewe to Manchester. Second, Birmingham to the East Midlands, with HS2 trains continuing to central Nottingham and central Derby, Chesterfield and Sheffield on an upgraded main line. And third, a brand new high-speed line from Warrington to Manchester and to the western border of Yorkshire, slashing journey times across the north. Mr. Speaker, I know they'll want to hear the detail of those journey times, and they'll also want to explain why their constituents would wish to wait decades more to deliver a journey almost no faster at all than these plans today. So, Mr. Speaker, I've heard some people say that we're just going about, and this is, I think, their point, electrifying the Transpennine route. This is wrong. What we're actually doing is investing £23 billion to deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail and the Transpennine route upgrade, unlocking east-west travel across the north of England. So in total, this package is 110 miles of new high-speed line, all of it in the Midlands and the north. It's 180 miles of newly electrified line, all of it in the Midlands and the north. I just remind the honourable gentleman that there's 63 miles of electrified line in 13 years. We'll upgrade the East Coast Main Line with a package of investment on track improvements and digital signalling, bringing down journey times between London, Leeds, Darlington, Newcastle and Edinburgh, bringing benefits to the North East much, much sooner than under the previous plans. And it adds capacity and speeds of services over more than 400 miles of lines, the vast majority of it in the Midlands and the North. And we'll study how best to take HS2 trains into Leeds as well. And we'll start work on the new West Yorkshire mass transit system, righting the wrong of this major city, probably the largest in Europe, which doesn't have a mass transit system. We commit today to supporting West Yorkshire Combined Authority over the long term to ensure that this time it actually gets done. In short, Mr. Speaker, we're about to embark on one of the biggest single acts of levelling up of any government in history. Well, listen to the numbers. It's 5 times more than was spent on Crossrail. It's 10 times more than was spent on delivering the Olympics. But they still think it's a small package, Mr. Speaker. It will achieve the same, similar or faster journey times to London and on the core Northern Powerhouse network than the original proposals, and will bring the benefits years earlier, as we double, in some cases, triple the capacity. So let me just set out a few of these investments. Rail journeys between Birmingham and Nottingham cut from an hour and a quarter to 26 minutes, city centre to city centre. Journeys between York and Manchester down to 55 minutes from 83 minutes today. Commuters will be able to get from Bradford to Leeds in just 12 minutes, almost half the time it takes today. There'll be earlier benefits for places like Sheffield and Chesterfield. Trips from Newcastle to Birmingham will be slashed by almost 30 minutes, and passengers in Durham and Darlington will benefit from smoother, more reliable trains, as the IRP delivers not just for our largest cities, but also for for smaller places and towns. For example, Kettering, Market Harborough, Leicester, Loughborough, Grantham, Newark, Retford, Doncaster, Wakefield, Dewsbury, Huddersfield, Stalybridge. They could all see improvements, electrification and faster services benefiting in ways that they would not have done under the original HS2 programme. Mr Speaker, we're not stopping there. Today's plan is about those places which connect and interact with HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail. So the scale of ambition with many of these projects lying outside of the scope. So just yesterday, I opened the first beaching reversal, reversing the beaching axe. And we are going to be doing the same in Northumberland, from Ashington, Blythe, Newcastle line, and many others. We're investing £2 billion in cycling, walking, £3 billion in turn-up-and-go bus services, and tens of billions in our country's roads. So, Mr Speaker, after decades of decline, with constrained capacity and poor reliability, finally, this plan will give passengers in the North and the Midlands the service they need and they deserve. It's not just about infrastructure. We're going to make train travel much easier as well. And today I can confirm £360 million to reform fares and ticketing, with the rollout of contactless pay-as-you-go ticketing to 700 urban stations, including 400 in the North. Mr Speaker, this is a landmark plan, by far the biggest of any network improvement, and focused on the North and Midlands. With more seats, more frequent services, shorter journeys, it meets the needs of today's passengers and the future generations. And we're getting started immediately. Today, with another £625 million for the electrification between Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds, bringing the total on the TRU to £2 billion and counting, and £249 million to further electrify the Midland Main Line between Kettering and Market Harborough, with work starting on the integrated rail plan by Christmas, Mr Speaker. Communities of every size, right across the North and the Midlands, in many cases years earlier than planned, will benefit. By taking a fresh look at HS2 and how it fits with the rest of the rail system, we'll be able to build a much improved railway that will provide similar or better services to almost every destination than the outdated vision drawn up for HS2 over a decade ago. This plan will bring the North and the Midlands closer together. It will fire up economies to rival London and the South East. It will rebalance our economic geography. It will spread opportunity. It will level up the country. It will bring benefits at least a decade or more earlier. And, Mr Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
We now come to Shadow Secretary of State Jim McMahon.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Secretary of State for advanced sight of this statement, and will be going out shortly to collect the actual plan and to scrutinise it. I'm frankly staggered by the way this statement started, that he was proud to present this to the House. Proud of what? The betrayal of trust, the betrayal of promises, and the betrayal of investment the North of England and the Midlands deserve. Mr Speaker, we've all seen the reports over the weekend, each one setting out the betrayal being put forward today. And there's no amount of gloss, no amount of spin that can be put on this. He promised HS2 to Leeds. He promised Northern Powerhouse Rail. He promised that the North would not be forgotten. But he hasn't just forgotten us, he's completely sold us out. As somebody who lives in Greater Manchester, I'm not going to take lectures on what Northern Powerhouse Rail means. We know exactly what it means. We were committing to a new line connecting Manchester and Leeds. And within a month of becoming Prime Minister, Boris Johnson said, I'm going to deliver on my commitment with a pledge to fund Leeds to Manchester. We were promised a new line, Mr Speaker. He's broken that promise, and he hasn't even got the decency to admit it. Mr Speaker, let's be clear. The scaling back of Northern Powerhouse Rail, coupled with the scrapping of the eastern leg of HS2, is a massive blow for our regions. Both schemes would have created 150,000 new jobs, connecting 13 million people in our major towns, our cities and our industrial heartlands. It was the then Chancellor, George Osborne, who first announced the Northern Powerhouse Rail in 2014. Since then, the Conservatives, including the Prime Minister, including the Transport Secretary, have recommitted and repromised 60 times. This is a once-in-a-generation chance to transform opportunity across our whole country, rebalancing the economy and making it work for working people. But that opportunity now looks set to be lost. And it's the very same working people that will likely face a record increase when rail fares go up next year. They'll be paying 50% more to get to work than they did a decade ago, relying on a crumbling, unreliable and overcrowded system that prioritises profit above passengers. And it's the same with buses. Fares up 70%, use down, and not a single one of the 4,000 zero-emission buses promised by the Prime Minister now 3 years ago, not a single one delivered. And what's on offer? £96 billion that we should be grateful for. But let's unpack that. £96 billion, £40 billion of which has already been committed from London to Crewe, but is being labelled as investment across the north of England. And of the £56 billion that remains, let's compare that to what the north of England would have got over the last decade had it had the same investment as London and the South East. And we're still £10 billion short. We are not going to accept crumbs off the table. Labour would reform our transport networks so they work for working people, with investment spread more evenly across the country, so that parents aren't forced to see their children leave the places where they were raised, only to find opportunity that is denied on their own doorstep. Most importantly, Labour will put working people first, using the power of government and the skill of business to ensure good quality jobs are created here in Britain and in every single region. Madam Deputy Speaker, Boris Johnson was elected on a promise to level the playing fields, to make things better for households across the country. We were promised a Northern powerhouse. We were promised a Midlands engine to be levelled up. But what we've been given today is a great train robbery, robbing the North of its chance to realise its full potential, robbing the next generation of the hope and the opportunity they are due, and robbing 15 million people across the North of the investment that they've been denied for 11 years under this rotten government.
Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to make sure I understand the Honourable Gentleman's approach to this, his lines, as it were, because £96 billion of expenditure, the single biggest ever investment, and we haven't made any secret of the fact that some of that money is already the Birmingham to Crewe line, the Crewe to Manchester line. Last time I checked, that benefits the Midlands and North, doesn't it? That actually is a help, and I realised that he wrote his response there before actually hearing what was in the statement, or decided to ignore it, because there's a brand new high-speed line from Warrington. So I just want to check the geography here. From Warrington to Manchester to west of Yorkshire in Marsden. And yet he doesn't think that that exists by his response. But I'll tell you overall what actually confuses me the most of all by this. It's that the leader of the opposition seems to be in a completely separate place. And I quote, the leader of the opposition said, "I oppose HS2 on cost and merit." So he opposes HS2. It will not achieve its stated objectives. But just for transparency, he did say that in 2015. What's he been saying more recently? He says the government should take this opportunity to cancel HS2. This is the leader of the opposition saying it. So before the Honourable Gentleman gets carried away, why doesn't he have a word with the leader of his party and work out whether they actually agree with his position on this? Because this is an enormous investment. It will create 3 new high-speed lines. It electrifies track. And just today, nearly 400 miles of track electrification is announced within these programmes. What a contrast, Madam Deputy Speaker. With the 63 miles of track they managed to electrify in 13 years in office. And I just want to finish by talking about the importance of the overall transport approach, because this isn't just about rail, as the Honourable Gentleman rightly points out. It's also about other means of getting around. You can't get around without a roads programme. We have a £20 billion+ road building programme. They oppose it. They don't want to build any roads. I'm not sure where he wants to run these buses he keeps talking about, but I have already written to him, and I think I'm right in saying sent the letter to the library of the House, because he will continue to go around saying of these 4,000 buses, none are on the road. That is factually untrue. I've written to him with the detail. 900 of those buses are ordered, many of them already on the road. I know that it is the opposition's job to oppose, but if he is already opposing his opposition leader, then no wonder they don't have a cohesive transport policy.
Chairman of the Transport Select Committee, Hugh Merriman.
Chief Speaker, thank you. The Prime Minister promised that HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail was not an either-or option, and those in Leeds and Bradford may be forgiven for viewing it today as neither. This is the danger in selling perpetual sunlight and then leaving it for others to explain the arrival of moonlight. Because on a standalone basis, this plan comprises some fantastic projects that will slash journey times and better connect our great northern cities. And for that, the transport team deserve much credit. My question, it costs us in this country £2 million to deliver a single kilometre of electrified track. The Germans can do this for under £500,000 because they have a rolling programme of electrification. What steps has the Secretary of State taken to ensure this new plan can be delivered to time and to this cost?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And my honourable friend's absolutely right. The improvements in journey times. For example, Bradford, which has been talked about a great deal, 12 minutes from Bradford to Leeds. What we called for, what everyone was calling for, is a London or South East style connectivity. 12 minutes between two of the North's great cities as a result of this plan is one of those potential upgrades. Not potential, it's in the plan, one of those upgrades. My honourable friend's absolutely right about the cost of electrification. A lot of these things seem to cost a lot more in this country. My honourable friend, the rail minister, is carrying out an electrification challenge to bring the sector in and challenge them to build on electrification much faster than currently happens. And of course, we also have, in addition to electrification, zero-carbon trains, electric trains and hydrogen trains like the Hydroflex, which will also help to resolve some of the more difficult to electrify areas. Though, as I say, we've got full-fat electrification on nearly 400 miles of road as a result of today's plan.
SNP spokesperson Gavin Newlands.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of the statement, although I did read most of it in the newspaper beforehand. But I do admire the Secretary of State's chutzpah for the most bullish U-turn I've yet seen in this place. And he talks of beaching reversals. This is nothing but an HS2 reversal. And bit by bit, HS2 and its grand vision for a rail network that may actually belong in the 21st century rather than the 19th century is being salami-sliced until all that's left is a Birmingham to London shuttle with a few token services to Manchester, benefiting few but costing us all. Perhaps the Secretary of State should ask the French government for some tips on how their high-speed rail network, now 2,800 kilometres long, or the Germans with over 3,000 kilometres. Denmark is building high-speed rail to link with Germany's network, including an 11-mile tunnel under the Baltic Sea. Meanwhile, the UK can't even manage linking itself. And on electrification, the 2015 manifesto promised electrification to Windermere, South Wales and the Midlands, and they were ditched. So forgive me if we're sceptical that today's promises will not meet the same fate. And for a country that started the railway age and produced Brunel, Stevenson and Joseph Locke, England is now badly served by its transport leadership. A leadership that no number of glossy reports and reviews can paper over. And so can I ask him what implications this will have for Barnett consequences for both Wales and Scotland? Will Wales now receive its fair share of funding if HS2 money is being redeployed elsewhere? And can he confirm that Barnett will also apply to Scotland's funding? Given the Scottish Government are miles ahead of the UK on decarbonisation, electrification and active travel, at least we know something useful will be done with that cash. And perhaps it's time that levelling up applied to the DfT. Move the department up to Newcastle, Carlisle or Doncaster and quickly find out what level the rest of England operates when given a shoestring to run a public transport network that is, in the 21st century, in theory only. Experiencing a third-class network the north of England is expected to endure every day as compared to that in Greater London might sharpen a few minds in the DfT as to where their priorities might lie in the future.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, as you know, the Treasury is going to Darlington. DFT has actually gone to Leeds and Birmingham. We've already got 70 staff up at our Leeds office, and they're going to be delighted to be able to travel around much faster as a result of this plan today. I should mention it involves £12.8 billion of upgrade of the Eastern Core. So this is upgrading the East Coast main line, digital signalling and the like. We're not near capacity on those routes yet. So £12.8 billion will help with the journey up the East Coast. Of course, the plan also today confirms the West Coast update of the HS2 part of it, rather, meaning that journeys to Scotland will be a great deal faster as a result. So there are lots of benefits when it comes to Scotland for bringing these journey times way down as a result of this investment in HS2, and this plan today delivers on that.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Secretary of State's statement, which I think was a good balance between what was hoped for and what can actually be achieved. I'm sure it was an oversight that he didn't mention Cleethorpes in his statement. And can he assure me that the restored direct link between Cleethorpes and King's Cross, which is in the LNER draft timetable, will indeed begin hopefully next year, but certainly by 2023? And can you assure me that the east-west freight corridor from the Humber ports is still a priority?
I thank my honourable friend. He's absolutely right. I missed it out of my forward, and I apologise. Cleethorpes certainly should get a mention. We are working, my honourable friend, the Rail Minister, on a Cleethorpes service, potentially direct to London. And with regards to the ports, I was actually visiting just a week or two ago and know the importance of the connectivity with those ports.
Hilary Byrne.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister repeatedly promised that HS2 and Northern Powerhouse Rail would be built in full. Today that promise has been broken, and Leeds and the North have been betrayed. Could the Minister explain, insofar as I understand the details, yet to read the full report, what is the logic in taking HS2 from Birmingham to East Midlands Parkway, building, as I understand it, a new high-speed line from Leeds to Sheffield, but leaving a huge, great big hole in the middle that would have Victorian railway engineers scratching their heads in disbelief to save, well, the Times says £10.3 billion. What is the purpose in doing that?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think I can reassure the Right Honourable Gentleman as much as one of the purposes of Northern Powerhouse Rail, which we are delivering, is to slash the journey times, for example, from Leeds to Manchester. We will deliver exactly that. We will provide a journey time of 33 minutes from Leeds to Manchester. A significant, very significant improvement, as you'll know. But that's not the only thing. We'll also cut the journey times from Leeds to London to an hour 53. Birmingham will be an hour and a half. So all of these journey times will be coming down dramatically because of the steps that we're taking today. And not only that, we've also announced £100 million to look at the best way to run the HS2 trains into Leeds, as well as to sort out a very long-term problem, which is that Leeds doesn't have a mass transit system. I think the biggest city in Europe without one. There have been many attempts before. We know that over the years. This time we intend to make sure it's followed through. So I think there's a lot for Leeds in this package, and it includes, as it happens, getting Northern Powerhouse Rail to run to Leeds. And I hope the honourable gentleman's constituents will feel it benefits them.
Robin Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Creating economic prosperity across Keighley and indeed the whole of the Bradford district is something which I care deeply about. Of course, this is linked to creating better transport connectivity. So I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I am deeply disappointed by today's announcement. The Bradford district has been, in my view, completely shortchanged. We are one of the most socially deprived parts of the UK, and we must get better transport connectivity. And I still want to see Northern Powerhouse Rail delivered with a main stop in Bradford, so we can unlock our economic opportunities. So can my right honourable friend explain to the House what the government is doing to deliver better, more reliable and cheaper rail services for my constituents in Keighley?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, look, let me just make sure that my honourable friend understands and appreciates the full relevance of today. 12-minute journey from Bradford to Leeds. That's nearly half of the current journey time. 30 minutes off, and probably at least 30 minutes off the Bradford to London journey after these upgrades are complete. And unlike the plans, which were not fleshed out at all, I know that Transport for the North and other people had talked about building all sorts of different versions of this, but one of their versions was indeed the upgrade of the TRU. The problem with these other plans is, no disrespect to my honourable friend, he may well not have been an MP in 2043, or maybe he will have been, to see those things delivered. These advantages that I'm talking about, this 12-minute journey, the 30-minute off the Bradford to London journey, those will be delivered in his first couple of terms as a Member of Parliament.
Catherine McKinnell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State knows fine well that the promised integrated infrastructure investment is about capacity as much as travel times. And they're just not being straight as they're asking Northerners to put up with make, do and mend rather than the infrastructure we were promised. Yep. Is it because the government continues to see the North as a problem to solve rather than an opportunity to invest in? And isn't this just another broken promise from this Prime Minister and Chancellor, who have seemingly cancelled levelling up because there are Tories on the line? It appears the Prime Minister is once again driving a train into the ditch off the track on his way to the North.
Madam Deputy Speaker, listening to the Honourable Lady, you would think I'd just come to this dispatch box to announce that Newcastle, for example, will have a longer journey to London, for example. The answer is exactly the opposite. Because of these plans I'm announcing today, the journey from Newcastle to London will be 21 minutes shorter. You would have thought she'd be standing up and welcoming today's massive investment into the train services, which will benefit her constituents. And even if she doesn't appreciate it, I rather suspect her constituents will.
Andrew Jones.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank my right honourable friend for this statement. I look forward to reading the detail of the plan. He has given us a complex statement because there are many changes to existing plans, but it's absolutely clear that no government has ever invested on this scale in British history, and he should not listen to any lesson from the party opposite who did nothing on the issue. But however, please can he detail a bit more on the timescales for the delivery? Specifically, when will people in Yorkshire be able to take advantage of the enhanced services that he's talking about? And can he comment a little bit further as well on the environmental benefits? I'm particularly thinking about the improved clearances for rail freight.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, just actually on the environmental advantages, I'm interested in the House to know that, of course, with HS2, it's been built in as environmentally friendly way as possible. Section 2B West is actually intended to be a net positive carbon contribution, not just in its running, but in its entire life cycle, which is going to be very important. I thought I'd refer the House and my honourable friend to pages 134 and 135, which contains a full timescale for when the various different benefits will arrive at different locations. In every case, these advantages will start arriving much, much sooner than under the original plans. And for all those people who say we just should have carried on ploughing on with the original HS2 plan, they then need to explain why it was right to wait to the 2040s for their constituents to feel the benefits. This way, the benefits will be started to be felt by this Christmas, where the work gets underway on the Midland Main Line and is already underway on the Transpennine route.
Liam Byrne.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to follow up my right honourable friend for Leeds Central. I just want to understand the new East-West division that the Secretary of State has set out today. So, as I understand it, our constituents moving from Leeds to Manchester will travel by high-speed train south of Leeds, then change trains to get a train to Nottingham Parkway, and then get on a new high-speed train from Nottingham Parkway to Birmingham. I think that's what the Secretary of State has set out. Madam Deputy Speaker, since we approved this plan in Cabinet, China has built 23,500 miles of high-speed line. This Tory government has built none. We've had a review every year. He's just destroyed the plans, but hundreds of millions of pounds in Birmingham is predicated on being at the heart of a network, not a mishmash. How can we now believe the plan that he set out?
I should point out, Madam Deputy Speaker, that China do not have the same health and safety approach as us. They have a slightly different view of how many people it's acceptable to kill per mile of track laid, and I don't think he's seriously considering we go down that route. I know that he represents a Birmingham constituency. I know that the Mayor of the West Midlands has widely and broadly welcomed this package. Birmingham does it very well out of it. The connection, which wasn't initially envisaged within the HS2 plan, between the biggest cities in the Midlands, Birmingham and Nottingham, for example, will now be complete with not just a parkway station, but stations into the city centre of Nottingham, into the city centre of Derby, and connecting Birmingham. So it's going to be fantastic news for his constituents. He asked about trains. No, people won't be changing the trains. They'll be on the same train all the way through the path.
Sir William Cash.
I did not hear the Secretary of State mention the stretch between Birmingham and Crewe, which cuts straight through my constituency from top to bottom, causing massive misery to my constituents. Would my right honourable friend confirm that discussions have taken place to improve the situation, and will he and his Minister of State commit to continue to listen to the proposed solutions which would mitigate this misery and help to solve the problems faced by my constituents?
Well, it's absolutely right that HS2 has had a big impact on a lot of communities, or does as it is built. And of course, the advantages in different places are different for different members and their constituents. So I'm absolutely delighted to assure my right honourable friend that he can continue to work with the HS2 Minister, who has done wonders to improve the relationship between the communities and try to bring some benefits, even where there aren't stops necessarily, to communities along the HS2 line through some of the community funds and other things. And I'll recommit to that to my honourable friend today.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was 5 years ago on Tuesday since Tory ministers blocked the privately financed rail electrification to Hull, and not one mention today of the great city of the north, Hull, and the economically important area of the Humber. Now, can the Secretary of State explain why passengers in Hull who pay more for their train tickets and get a poorer service will have to wait even longer now, because I can't see anything in the detail of the Prime Minister delivering on his promise for Northern Powerhouse Rail. In the Hull and the Humber area, levelling up means absolutely nothing.
As the honourable lady would be right if it didn't matter to her constituents, for example, to be able to travel to Manchester 30 minutes faster than they can at the moment. If it didn't mean that they could, from Hull to Manchester 30 minutes faster they can at the moment. If it didn't matter to them to be able to travel quickly and efficiently down the East Coast main line, then I suppose it wouldn't matter. But the reality is this plan actually delivers all of those things, and I think it would be a lot less disingenuous to come to this House and welcome these huge improvements. Journey times 30 minutes faster to Manchester, much faster to London, and potentially more trains per hour because of the increased capacity. I would have thought those are the things the honourable lady would be welcoming.
Darren Henry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Government for what is a positive announcement for rail infrastructure in the East Midlands? But could my right honourable friend please outline what is planned for Towton in my constituency of Broxtowe?
Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend has been an incredible advocate for Towton and the surrounding area, and today is really a triumph for him, because not only are we going to ensure that we, as I mentioned before, connect up the major cities, so Birmingham to Nottingham. But we've also committed to Toton to ensure that this brand new development also gets development funding, which will be matched by the private sector, to develop a station to allow Toton to fulfil the role that he has campaigned so assiduously for. So Toton very much in the plan today, and I think he'll be delighted with what he reads.
Graham Stringer.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State has done an extraordinarily good job today of presenting what Number 10 are briefing the press as a reduction in the rail investment programme of £18 billion. That's the truth. The plan that the Secretary of State also hasn't told the House involves getting rid of the tunnels that take HS2 through Manchester to a low-level station at Manchester Piccadilly. Can I ask him if he will do an assessment of the impact on putting HS2 on stilts through Manchester, the impact that that will have on potential regeneration? HS2 will bring regeneration, but if you put it in the air like that, it is most likely to sterilise the area of either side. You would not have put Crossrail on stilts in Greater London.
I think it's worth explaining to the House, actually, that the tunnels will bring HS2 into Manchester. It's not the case that they'll be on stilts coming in. I think he's referring specifically to the station element of this, which has been studied and restudied many different times. And look, of course, it is the case that we need to spend money. We can only spend the same money once. We need to spend it as wisely as possible. If you spend £6-7 billion building the station underground at Manchester, then you're going to take away from Liverpool or Leeds or Hull or some of the other places who are calling for money. It's also the case, and he rightly points out, that this will deliver for the difference in 4 minutes in the journey from Manchester to Leeds, for example, with £18 billion less. But that doesn't take away from the fact that today's announcement is £23 billion on Northern Powerhouse Rail, including new high-speed lines from Warrington to West Yorkshire, and including all of the huge upgrades that we've been describing today as well. So Manchester is a principal beneficiary of this entire programme, and we wish his constituents well in their new journey times.
Well, how?
I welcome the announcement, and particularly the improved speed of delivery. Once in a generation would be good, and I don't know about the member for Keighley has been here in 2043, but I'll be 83-year-old, so I don't want it to take that long. Really would encourage as much UK provision into the supply line. I will be leaving here later today and on a Zoomer back up to Sedgefield on a train built in Newton Aycliffe, and I hope we see many more of these around this thing. But what I really need to ask him about is, in terms of supply, I think there's a bit of uncertainty with residents as to how this impacts on things like the restoring your railways for things like Ferry Hill and making sure that those are still going to proceed. But also importantly, we need to head north for the Leamside line, and what opportunities come for that in order to deliver north for Sedgefield.
I thank my honourable friend. It's worth saying, actually, that 97% of HS2 companies are UK registered. There are over 2,000 businesses involved in the delivery. There are many bidding, as he knows, for things like the train delivery, and there'll be further announcements on that side of things soon. And in terms of the improvements from today's plan, I know that Darlington has had capacity constraints that I've been to see for myself. They'll be massively improved by these plans. So I think all in all, it's very good news for his constituents in Sedgefield.
Judith Cummins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I've got to say, Secretary of State, your upbeat statement doesn't really chime with reality. This statement represents missed opportunities for the people and businesses of Bradford. This short-sighted decision puts at risk over £30 billion in economic benefits that would have flown from a full NPR with a city centre train stop for Bradford. However, the disparity between the rhetoric and the delivery is huge. It's big on rhetoric and short on delivery. So, Secretary of State, just how long have you known that you would be Secretary of State, just how long has it been known that the promises would be broken on HS2 and NPR and letting down the people of Bradford and the people of the North.
For her constituents in Bradford, who at the moment want to travel to Leeds, I think that's a 20 to 22-minute journey. The good news is that after this announcement today, it will take 12 minutes, and that brings real connectivity between these two great northern cities, which I think is incredibly important. I think it's important to also say that this government has always said we will look at the best ways to improve efficiency and reliability. And again, I'm pleased to say today that her constituents, should they, like herself, need to travel down to London, will, once this work's been completed, be able to get here 30 minutes faster than is the case currently. Again, that's a very significant delivery, and of course these things won't happen, as we've been saying, in decades' time, in the 2040s. They'll be happening in this decade, which I think is incredibly important as well. So, you know, I do say to her, I believe that this is a plan that will deliver for her constituents in Bradford. Of course, there are always more things. Of course, there's always the future. I also think it's important that people know the current plans in order that they can plan for those things. And right now, the connectivity between Bradford and Leeds improving so much, I'm sure will be making many people think about how fortunate they are to be able to get to another major city just so fast after these plans will be in place.
Sir Edward Lee.
HS2 was always a white elephant, but as far as the East Coast is now concerned, it's a white elephant missing a leg, because we were promised it was going to relieve congestion on the East Coast main line because we're going to go to Leeds. So where's that promise? But there's one promise he can keep, as my honourable friend for Cleethorpes said. For years we've been promised a through train serving 250,000 people from Grimsby and Cleethorpes through my constituency, Market Rasen and Lincoln, down to London. We're still waiting. Just saying we're working on it is not enough. We've had these promises again and again. Or am I going to be standing up here when I'm 93 in 2043 still asking for my train?
Secretary of State.
Well, I suspect my honourable friend will be making a very passionate case on this. I know that my honourable friend, the Rail Minister, is working on the business case, as he says. I just want to mention on the eastern leg of East Coast Main Line that what's often misunderstood is the West Coast had huge amounts of upgrades carried out on it during the 90s to increase capacity and was maxed out. On the East Coast, those upgrades, which now include digital signalling and technologies not available then, mean there is still quite a lot of capacity to be exploited. And I don't really understand this argument of saying, never mind about maxing out the capacity, the electrification, the digitalisation of signalling, let's just rip through and build yet another line. Let's actually do the things which work and deliver the fastest and do it in our lifetimes. And that's what this plan today will deliver.
5 bets.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There's been a great deal of commitment in Sheffield to HS2 across the political parties and in the business community. So today, there'll be a lot of anger. People will feel that Sheffield has been once again snubbed and left behind. I think as a consolation, we're going to get the electrification of the Midland Main Line. Is that the third time it's been promised? It's already been scrapped twice. So are we going to be third time lucky? What's the guarantee? Lots of questions, Madam Deputy Speaker, about the links between Sheffield and the other major cities. And is there going to be investment in our tram network, including badly needed links to our hospitals? Lots of questions. Would the Secretary of State therefore agree to meet with Sheffield MPs, the City Council and the Mayor to discuss the details of these proposals and what it actually means for our city?
Secretary of State.
Well, I know my HS2 Minister is chomping at the bit to have exactly that discussion. I don't want the honourable gentleman to have inadvertently misled the House or his constituents about the announcement today, because the good news for him and his constituents is these are exactly the same journey times as were promised to him through HS2 now to Sheffield through today's plan. But the good news is, rather than having to wait till 2043, as I've said several times, particularly for the Midland Main Line upgrades, we'll be starting that work this Christmas.
Sarah Brickcliffe.
Speaker, levelling up across the north means improving our transport and connectivity links for communities like mine in Ham and Haslingden, and he'll know I've been lobbying about the reopening of the Skipton to Colne railway line and the freight terminal. But we're still in a position where a 25-mile journey by rail and road can take up to an hour by rail and can take easily 2.5 hours at peak rush hour time. So can the Secretary of State set out, please, how this announcement will achieve levelling up in communities like mine and that they're still focused on the smaller projects?
Secretary of State.
Thank you. I do want to mention to my honourable friend and to the House, actually, that one of the big announcements today is smart ticketing, which will make journeys much easier and more convenient for people. It will also help to bring in fare capping. So if somebody, perhaps from her constituents, using the train several days a week, maybe more days than they'd originally budgeted for, hasn't got a season ticket, therefore, the version of smart ticketing means that that contactless system repays the person's credit card at the end of the week. So that's an advantage that she'll get. It is true to say, and I want to be completely upfront about it, of course, not every single town and city and village in the country benefits from this plan, but this is not the end of it. We still have the rail network, the RNEP, which my honourable friend, the Rail Minister, is working on, and of course many other programmes, including restoring your railway. So there are other opportunities as well. I'd be very happy to organise a meeting with my honourable friend, the Rail Minister, for her. And just to clarify to the previous speaker, I did start by saying that meeting was accepted.
Barry Sherman.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my priority for so many years has been the connectivity of the towns and cities across the north of England and Yorkshire in particular. And it would be wrong of me not to say there's some good news in the statement this morning. I believe that there are some advantages for Huddersfield. But can I say that the problem with this is, as my honourable friend has just said, there is a hole in the middle of this plan. This plan is not strategic enough, it's not integrated enough, it's not ambitious enough. There is some good stuff in it, but could the Secretary so go back and have a rethink about the boldness and the timescale?
Secretary of State.
I do welcome the honourable gentleman's tone. I know he was never a fan of HS2 originally, and he's right to say that there are actually many benefits for Huddersfield in this plan. For example, journeys to Birmingham, Curzon Street cut more trains to Leeds from Huddersfield and improved services. Huddersfield benefits greatly from this plan. He's absolutely right about making sure that this stitches into the wider rail network. I think once he's had the opportunity to read the integrated rail plan, he'll actually find answers to many of his queries, and I welcome his, at least tacit support of some of these measures.
Peter Bone.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful for the excellent Secretary of State to come to the House and make such a, as Sir Humphrey would say, courageous decision, because it would be much more politically easy just to carry on with HS2. But what we've done today is given better service to more people. And in my particular constituency, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the East Midlands in Wellingborough, the electrification going north is something that's overdue and will be welcome. We didn't benefit in any way from HS2. So could the Secretary of State say that because of his courageous decision, he will still be in place next week?
Secretary of State.
You never know in politics, but I can tell you that my honourable friend makes a very good point, which is electrification can really be a game changer on our railways. He's already experienced it, I think I'm right in saying, up to his constituency, but then not further north. This plan completes that and brings on the Middle and Main Line that electrification up to Sheffield. It'll make a very dramatic difference to him and his constituents, and I thank him for welcoming it today.
Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today's announcement is going to scrap much-needed plans to improve rail capacity and connections in the communities in the Midlands and the North, where those plans should have boosted economic prosperity in those communities. But just a few weeks ago, the Chancellor was announcing plans to make it cheaper to take domestic flights. Can the Secretary of State explain how these plans together deliver against either of their stated objectives to level up or to tackle climate change? Very good.
Secretary of State.
I did think the honourable lady was going to stand up and ask how it benefits Richmond. specifically. But I suppose it does if you want to travel anywhere Midlands or North. She's absolutely right to say that it's important that people can take rail travel affordably. I think it's also right to remind the House that in all of these decisions, we're having to balance the wider purse, the taxpayers' money. We've spent £15 billion keeping our rail service going during coronavirus outside of all of this other expenditure. Today we're coming to the House with a £96 billion investment package and of course we'll always try to balance the costs directly to the individual passenger making the journey against the wider taxpayer who's supporting this infrastructure. It's always my goal to get more people travelling on the trains, of course, and public transport. I think it's a worthy goal, and I think these plans will help that in the future.
Kevin Hollingray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the features of Northern Powerhouse Rail, as I understood it, it was a completely new line from Leeds to Bradford to Manchester. Is that latter journey, Bradford to Manchester, was going to be 20 minutes? As I understand it now, would my right honourable friend confirm, it'd be more like 45 minutes from Bradford to Manchester. And additionally, the new station in Bradford, which would have given a King's Cross-style regeneration opportunity for Bradford, which is really very severely in need of it, will now be missed. And would he confirm this really is an economic price that will be paid for generations for not doing that?
Secretary of State.
No, with the greatest respect, I don't accept that narrative for several reasons. And first of all, it was Transport for the North who suggested, and it was actually a 29-minute journey they suggested. It was one of the options put forward. Another option was, in fact, the thing that we're doing. And as I've said to the House before, there are lots of benefits for Bradford, that 12-minute journey to Leeds, a journey of at least half an hour shorter to London, all come about because of this plan. So, governments have to make decisions, and I accept we can't do everything all the time, everywhere. But I think when he speaks to his constituents, he'll be able to tell them about dramatically improved journey times as a result of the integrated rail plan today.
Tony Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State a few moments ago, in response to one of his honourable friends, extolled the virtues of electrification. Any real plan for the north of England would have the electrification from my honourable friend's seat in Hull all the way through to Liverpool, access to Sheffield from Manchester, access to Newcastle in the north east. That scale of imagination is simply lacking in what the Secretary of State has announced. Will you guarantee this, that they will do no damage that would prevent a more ambitious programme in the future?
Maybe it's been lost in translation, but actually Liverpool to York is a core part of this NPR programme, electrified and, as I've described before, with some high-speed lines as well. None of this prevents further electrification and new plans to stretch beyond to Hull, to Newcastle, and